Welcome, everybody, to the March meeting of the EAC. It's great to see everyone here. We're going to start off with a presentation by a community member, Jane Golis. Take it away, Jane.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matt. I'm Jane Golis. I live on West Wayne Avenue next to Ordericio Park. And 2 weeks ago, a group brought a proposal to Parks and Rec to build a mountain bike race course in the small woods at the rear of Ordericio. This is a concern of mine and several other neighbors. Only the adjacent neighbors got the letter from the township from Parks that this was going to be brought to Parks and Rec. And because I think that building a mountain bike race course in these small woods will really impact the environment of the entire woods, I thought that the EAC should be made aware of it. And specifically, I'm requesting that the EAC look at this and request an environmental impact study be done on the woods should this proposal go forward in the township. From what I know, I've never really done this like slideshow thing before. So, from what I know, they're proposing to put over construct a mile-long or more race course through the woods in Ordericio, sort of a serpentine fashion, and also use the long grassy hill that's along the side of the woods. Ordericio Park is already a baseball field, a great baseball field, and it's a soccer field. And the woods are the only public woods in our section of the township, which is is a dense residential area on one side and more open residential on the other side. Here's the woods. It's mostly an upland native beech woods with some oaks and very few ashes. You can see it doesn't have a lot of congestion from like vines and, invasives. It's primarily a native woods with all the layers you would expect in the woods. Go forward. Those are beech nuts. It's a great habitat for wildlife. From the leaf litter on the ground to the sky above. There's invertebrates, there's amphibians, there's reptiles, there's mammals, there's birds. I could mention a few of them, but I think everybody's aware of what lives in the woods. The group that wishes to build this racetrack said that the woods they were going to clear the debris and brush in the woods and I guess pick up some of the trash. There is some trash in the woods. People use the woods. They leave bottles behind and things like that. But I wouldn't say the woods is trashy. I think what they call debris, I would call deadfalls. What am I doing? I would call deadfalls, fallen trees and large logs that are habitat. Then the brush, I think that what they call brush is along the clearing. There is multiflora rose along the clearing that's in the middle of the woods. But this I would also refer to as a bramble thicket. It's great habitat for low nesting birds like cardinals and sparrows and cover from field mice and rabbits. It's not really expanding because it's mowed on one edge and the shade prevents it from getting too much larger on the other. This is also the area of the woods that is extremely wet because it's at the bottom of the hill. So, there's more of the bramble. It's great cover for animals. Some of the animals that do live in the woods that I didn't know lived there are what they call flying squirrels. They're really gliders. They're strictly nocturnal. This is actually taken out my kitchen window of a fox and a flying squirrel, which I didn't even know they were there till 2 years ago. They tend to live in, cavities in trees, just like the woodpeckers and the owls do. And I know we have 3 species of owls in the woods, and we have several species of woodpeckers. But I didn't know we had flying squirrels. We also have deer. I took this also to say, we have deer, but you can see that the ground is pretty wet in the back corner of Ordericio. And I believe riding mountain bikes continually over this area is going to cause issues. There's the cliff with the winter seep, water coming out. This is in the lower right corner of the woods. You can see that there is water, standing water after this winter. The water flows down the hill. The small woods in Ordericio is really, well, it's trying its hardest, I guess, to mitigate water runoff. And if they were to put serpentine trails through there, or I call it a race course, it will increase water runoff, which, being the headwaters of the Darby Creek watershed, is going to bring silt and down into the adjacent properties along the western side of Ordericio, where the small stream starts, and those property owners would have to deal with more stormwater management, as would other people downstream. You know, leaf litter really absorbs water well. Trees absorb a great amount of water. If you compress this, you're just going to get more stormwater issues. And one of the other things, because it's a mature forest, this bunch of trees really sequesters a lot of carbon and produces a lot of oxygen. So the small woods in Ordericio are doing their part for climate change. And, forgot. Beech trees are really surface rooted. You can see there's already water runoff. Are really surface rooted. If you put trails through a beech forest, you're going to break the connections of the roots. In fact, beech trees tend to be colonial. A beech will send up shoots from its roots, and eventually those shoots become rather large trees. So in Ordericio, most of the trees are actually interconnected underground through their roots. So pushing a bike race course through there is going to break all those connections. This is a long shot of Ordericio from the baseball end of the field. You can see where they propose to have the beginning of this race course is up on the left side on Highland Avenue. And then they propose to use that long grassy hill and turn at the bottom and go back and forth through the woods. I don't think there'll be much grass left there. If we have 50 or so bike riders using this race course every afternoon and early evening, spring, summer, and fall. The group also, at their presentation, suggested that they were going to invite riders from other townships to use this. I just took these photos from the net. I guess they would be similar to what they're planning for Ordericio. And this would be children cutting their pathway through the woods. They also could create these jumps in the woods, because I think the neighbors in the neighborhood around Ordericio, we use the woods just to look at. We might go there to listen to birds, to take a walk. That doesn't really degrade the woods, but mountain bike riding, they're there not to really enjoy the woods. They're there to ride through the woods, to bounce over tree roots and rocks and things like that. That's sort of self-explanatory. If you see pictures of mountain bike races, they usually have mud on them if it's raining. I have music. And oops. Oh, wait. Ta-da. Oh, well, there's supposed to be bird song. Birds are supposed to be singing, and they're not singing. So I would ask that the AC look into this and maybe coordinate or ask the Department of Environmental Resources from the state of Pennsylvania and the Fish and Wildlife, and maybe even the federal, Environmental Protection Agency, because this is part of the headwaters of the Darby Creek. I just think this is too small woods. It's not the proper venue for this, for mountain bike racing.
Thank you very much, Shane. Questions, folks? Margie, hit your button there.
No, I really don't. I don't know the acreage. I know that it's not very large. I think they kick around that. I think I heard 5 acres, but it's a slope. It's not, obviously not as large as the playing fields, but it is. It's open to the public. It's there for us. Even if you don't go in the woods, it's nice to be able to look at the woods, and I think that looking at the future, Radnor's only going to get more and more, construction, and so having a small piece of native woodland is, I think, important in a neighborhood. And it's the only one we've got.
Do you have any idea how many of these participants in the mountain biking are Radnor residents?
No, I don't. But the presentation group said that they thought, and I was just there going, so I think that Tammy at Parks and Rec would have a better number for you, but I think that they were saying 50. But that
50%?
maybe they have 20 now, and that, or 30 or 40, and they were saying 50. It's for preteens and teen and high school, and then they said they were going to invite other townships who are developing these teams to use Ordorisio. I think right now they ride their bikes in Tredyffrin and at other locations, most of which I see. Well, I don't know. I really don't know. But most mountain bike people or mountain bike riders tend to ride their bikes in larger places like French Creek Park or out in the state forest lands where they use the fire trails. Because I just asked somebody, I said, where do you ride? He goes, oh, I go out in the state forest lands and we use the fire trails that they cut for fire access when the trees are burning. And I think at other locations, but they tend to be in larger wooded or fields or whatever.
Are they proposing to pay for the use of this park at all?
I don't think so. And also, I know that's not your venue, but I think there's other issues that go along with this,
Was there any
Certainly parking.
discussion of insurance, Jane?
I would assume that even if they're carrying insurance as an association, that the township's going to be also involved. I mean, I can't imagine they wouldn't be, but I don't know.
Well, who lays out the trail?
They said they were going to do that.
So they want to enter our park and lay out a trail?
Yes, it was that.
That
was the
could
bid.
potentially be dangerous.
And also, I mean, if you're going to, because as you know, you're on planning, Skip's my brother-in-law, that you always have to have storm water management, and you have to have landscape plans, and you have to have compensatory planting plans, and you have to have, and so I thought the most logical thing when I heard about this was to come to the Environmental Commission or Council and ask you to look at this, because you're the board that's concerned with the environment primarily. I think there's other things the township's going to have to look at, but I just think, on the whole, I think Ordorisio's woods are too small for this. It's also, they're taking away the use by the neighborhood, because believe me, if they're in doing this 5 days a week, the neighbors can't use the woods. And
Is there any kind of trail in the woods?
yeah, there's trails in there. The deer have made trails. I mean, you want to walk in Ordorisio, you can walk in Ordorisio in the woods. I mean, I walk in Ordorisio's woods. I would say that it's not constructed trail. It's a trail.
Is there any parking, or were they expecting to use street parking?
There's parking at that end of the park, and there's 2 parking lots that are used by the people that, do soccer and baseball. And there's a small street parking down there on Fairview where the basketball court is, and Church and Highland Avenue. But those parking spaces are used by the residents. Several of those most of the houses on Highland Avenue don't have driveways. I don't think they have driveways, I shouldn't say.
And how do the other residents feel about this? Do you have a sense of that?
Most of us don't know about it yet. Only the immediate adjacent neighbors got the letter. I think that Jake Abel is trying to get together and maybe send a letter out to more of the neighbors. But I can't speak for my neighbors. I can just think that I thought that the woods is way too small for what they're proposing, a mile-long race course in there. and it will only degrade the woods. I can't see it being I can't see it. I can't see the woods remaining stable with this use.
I know there was pushback against Jake on Monday night at the commissioners' meeting. The township doesn't want to notify the neighbors. It's not that they don't want them to know, but they don't want to use the resources in the postage
Okay.
to let the people know. So there was some discussion of how would you do it? It's going to mean a group walking from door to door.
Yeah.
All the way around to make sure that everybody knows about
Yeah,
it.
and that's for the immediate neighbors, but other people like over on South Devon or
Right.
Conestoga Road or
Right.
even a few blocks away come to Ordericio in the evening to play with their children and enjoy the woods and run in the grass and sled on the hills and
And not be disturbed by 40 bicycles going a million miles an hour up and down hill. I think the injury,
Yeah.
the danger piece in a tight course
Yeah.
with a lot of kids who are just starting out is an
I think so too.
opportunity for disaster.
I know people, well, this is not what I wanted to talk, I just happen to know people that rode these bikes as adults and he's so injured he has trouble getting up sometimes. Now, he's an adult. He was doing it in Colorado, but you can fall off a bike anywhere,
Yes. So do you know if this was posted on that, the next door Radnor Trail
No,
social media? I mean,
unfortunately, I don't. No.
does anyone look at that or do that? I get like a zillion posts through that, and I kind of ignore a lot of them, but that would possibly be a way of
Something you could do
informing
it.
people. Yeah, I mean, if you want, I can.
You also, for the Highland Avenue folks, and I'm not setting them aside, but you have to be, A, they have to have computers. B, they probably need to have cable. So
Right,
there's
but,
a
I
whole
mean, this is-
element of people who either don't want them or don't have them.
Right, but this would be one way of letting some people know.
Right.
Yeah, I was speaking more towards the environmental
Yes.
impact I think was going to have. I think Highland Avenue will take the brunt of the traffic and
So do I.
noise and everything else. But that wasn't, I didn't know if that was your,
Well, they are residents,
oh,
and
the
they are
residents, definitely, yeah,
taxpayers.
no, I agree. No, I'm not saying that, but I just thought that I was going to speak to, I think that this is not a good idea for the woods. For the
Environmental.
environmental of the woods going forward. And I thought that it should be carefully studied and evaluated. I think there are other places, even if it's not in Radnor, for this activity, but not in a very small copse of native trees in the back of a very valuable park to the neighbors and the area around it.
And you said the course is only 1 mile?
Well, it might be more than a mile, but if they can fit a mile in there, in order for them to fit a mile in this, they're going to have to go back and forth
That's
like
what I
this.
mean, very repetitive. It's almost like the Indy
Yeah.
500. It would
Yeah, I
really
mean,
sustain
up and
damage to
down,
going
up and
in
down,
that
up
circle.
and down, because
Right.
it's not very wide. I don't know how wide Ordericio is. What would you guess? I mean, obviously there's a baseball diamond in it, but which was built actually by Wayne Baseball built Ordericio Park, or that's
Yeah.
the neighborhood legend. Contractors that lived in that end of Wayne, moved the dirt around and made the baseball field. I don't know if they made it in the 50s or the 60s. Yeah, I don't know how big Ordericio is offhand, how big it is, but it's not that large a park. It's certainly not the Willows. It's a neighborhood park. And it already has baseball, it has soccer, it has the middle school baseball, it has the middle school soccer. I think they play lacrosse, but I can't remember. And we have the soccer league in the fall. So there's a lot of people using Ordericio and caring for it. I mean, it's beautiful, and the woods are beautiful, and I just hope that it's carefully thought of before any action is taken.
Does this group feel comfortable somehow communicating to the township the request to have an environmental impact study done of this area before any decision is made?
That makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you, and I know that Woods thank you, and The environment thanks you.
Well, Jane, I can tell you, I lived on Atlee Road in the 60s, and it was just the quarry.
Yeah.
There was nothing there in the 60s.
Well, now there's a lot more houses even, on Atlee.
Well, in
Not
fact,
on Atlee, but there.
in fact, the Blue Route was going to go through
Oh, yeah, that's
the
right.
quarry.
Yeah, that's right.
It was called the Green Route.
Greener, yeah.
And it was going to be 25 feet from the house we were living in on Atlee Road, so I know, what was going on there at the time. Fortunately,
Right.
they picked blue,
Yeah.
not green or yellow.
Yeah. These woods are really valuable, I think, now and I think going forward in the future for so many reasons.
Well, maybe there's a way
People need-
to feature them as a woodland,
Oh.
which is the counteraction to making it a mountain bike course.
Well, I'm perfectly willing to help with that.
Talk to the Radnor Conservancy might not be a bad move as
Yeah.
well.
Yes, yeah. I've let them know.
Good.
so. But more people know, and the more people think about it, I think it's a good idea. Thank you. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Thank you very much.
And I think, everybody should bring their bags to stores.
Nice, thank you. Real quick, did anybody have any concerns about the minutes from last time?
I
The
was
shortest minutes in
present.
the
I was
history of-
present.
Oh, you were
I'm
present?
not on the list.
You're not on the list, I apologize. I'll
That's all
add you
right.
to the list. I had real challenges getting the materials today, because I see the next item on the list after announcements should be ready for 100, not sustainability, so sorry about that. Just making a note of this. I've got lots of follow-up from today. Any announcements? Any upcoming events, anything folks are tracking? Okay. Why don't we jump into Ready for 100 then and just talk about next steps a little bit. We have a list of potential participants in a steering committee.
Right.
And Sarah, you had some ideas about kind of a structure for how that process can play out.
Well, the first is a question that I don't have the answer. Considering that Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez and Mark Lee talked about the new Green Deal, do we want to have, and considering the negative publicity that unfortunately received in the newspaper after the resolution meeting, do we want to, it's just a question, do we really want to call, or do we want to call it the Green Team? In order to stay just a little bit separate from what's going on politically. It's just a thought I had today while I was,
From a PR perspective, the
From a
more you
P-
can push the energy efficiency, money-saving thing is probably to your benefit, for the
yes,
benefit of the
rather
project.
than, let's not get into politics of Republicans and, it's just a question I had. But anyhow, Robin and Matt and I've come up with a list of people, which is sort of not in hierarchical, but there are a couple of levels. We want to talk to PennMed, of course. We want to talk to Mainline Health, who is considering passing their own Ready for 100. Bagis, builders. So they're sort of on one level, and then there are the working bees on the other. Because and maybe it's just my bias, but a lot of this is going to be a behavioral change. And I think it's going to take a lot of education, sort of low-key education, to entice people to come in under the umbrella. So Robin and Matt and I have been doing it, and Robin's coming home tonight. So the goal is to have the letters go out, and I think it should not be an email. I think it should be a letter, a formal letter, snail mail type, with a follow-up call, and we can figure out who are the people we need to do a little arm twisting, and have that done by Earth Day. So our first mark is to have a committee formed. We have 2 more buildings at Public Health, Public Works, to have a PICO analysis done. And that's just really, I think, as simply as getting back in touch with Steve Clark and a woman at PICO to have that done, So then that's sort of a piece of it that's done too, so we can begin this efficiency piece. And I know Bob wants the library to be done, but we can't do it until the library's been open a year to find out what their energy use was. And PICO may say January to January, but anyhow. And then by Earth Day 2020, which is what our resolution says, we'll have a plan. But we've got a primary and an election, and there's going to be a lot of challenges in this primary. And Bob basically said to Matt and Robin and I, you can put in a wish for money, but the budget may not be set early because the budget starts in September, but we have this election in November, and it may be the Board of Commissioners may look very differently come January 2020. So choose the people we want, get a team together, begin to do public education, letters to the editor. I'd like to see us do a table at the Fall Festival. I participated in a statewide conference call today, and I don't want to say no, but some communities are going door to door, and I'm not so sure about that. There's a lot of...
That's a lot to take on.
That's a lot to take on. So we're moving ahead. I've been going to other townships when they pass their resolutions, and it's really quite educational, and we're building sort of a team. I'm hoping that some more townships in Delaware County will get going, and so we can be more like Chester County that's got 10 now, so they're working not only collaboratively, but they're all putting in money in a pot in order to have a planner. And Montgomery County is, Conshohocken is next week, and Plymouth Township is the following week, and I've been to Amblers, and I've been to White Marsh, and Cheltenham's done it. I mean, they're really getting a critical mass. So I'll be pushing that with the Delaware County group.
That's a lot of shoe leather. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you for doing that work.
You know, it's rather important.
It's very important. A clarification question. Is it safe to say that although we're trying to seed the initial group of participants, we really want this to be inclusive and open to anybody who wants to jump in and help?
Absolutely. We're going to need a pretty large, what I'm calling a residential component to do the public education piece. And Bob has said we can have a meeting here if we can fit it in the calendar
Right.
almost any time
Yeah,
we
the big
want.
constraint is time, I think,
Right.
isn't it? I hear your concern about the name of the green team. I don't know how other folks feel about that. To
If it
me,
doesn't
it's-
bother to you, it's fine. Just wanted to raise it.
There is a historical precedent as well,
Okay,
so we'd be
great.
building on, what's been done in the past, but I'm certainly open to trying something new.
It's it just was raising an issue. It occurred to me that the press is pretty,
Yeah.
yeah. So we'll go ahead. We'll just do it.
I mean, the words "green team" have been used here at least 20, 30 times. So it's a shame to surrender that, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay. No, it's fine. I just didn't want to walk into a swamp if we didn't have to.
There may be no way to avoid that. So, onward. Great. Well, thank you very much, Sarah.
You're welcome.
The plastic bag sort of initiative, plastic bag and plastic straws. I circulated the Narberth ordinance and there was another ordinance that.
Amblers, it's a
Ambler that you dug up,
resolution
yeah.
rather than an ordinance.
A resolution, and that's the key thing. I thank you for doing that, and I think, to me, as I look at what's been happening here, and I sent you folks a newspaper link about the European Parliament phasing out single-use plastics. I think there's a lot of momentum going on with this. It's just not clear to me what the right approach is. I don't want us to be too heavy-handed. And I certainly don't want to put the brakes on here, but I think that the BOC is definitely interested in our coming forward with some ideas and maybe even a concrete proposal. I think it's a great opportunity to get something done, and I would just want to be a little bit thoughtful about how we approach it. And I'll stop talking there and see if folks have comments.
My only thought is that we probably need to approach it significantly different than Narberth, which is a very small area. We got some fairly large companies to contend with: McDonald's, Wawa, Giant, and it's going to be a little bit different getting them on board, which they would need to be in order for it to be effective. I think it would probably start off voluntarily to some extent. Did Ron wasn't he going to approach some people approach some companies about those ideas?
I think it was Andrew, and I think he had a couple of conversations, but I'm not sure how far that went. Colleen had some discussions, I think, this week, right?
Right, I actually spoke with Christopher Todd, who's the president of the Wayne Business Association. I've asked him to get some comments. And even the Narberth Borough ordinance, I mean, it is pretty strong. And it was passed in October, but it doesn't go into effect till April 11th. So if anything is going to, if there could be repercussions, I think we should wait it out till something happens in Narberth. And I've also looked at a lot of other, and they also have, it was the 6-month moratorium before it basically went into effect, and then you always had a year to ask to be exempted if you said, look, I have this massive supply of plastic bags or straws. So people really have a year and a half to get moving on it, and maybe we would do the same thing here, but I definitely think we should wait till see what happens in Narberth. But when I looked at the California statutes, they were only banning plastic straws in full-service restaurants, not in fast food and takeout. And it seems like Narberth banned it across the board. And I hear what you're saying, because I don't know what Wawa would do if in Radnor they can't have plastic straws and they can.
My reading of the Narberth one was that you're looking at, it was like a warning, the first offense, and then it was $100, $200 fine, which, depends on enforcement, but if you're a small business owner and you get a $200 fine because someone handed someone a straw without them asking for it, that's, if I was reading that, I'd be pretty concerned. And that's what I mean, is we have, on the one side, you have the larger companies that probably don't want to change how they do things, and the other side, you have smaller companies who probably are afraid of it affecting their business because they probably don't have as much leeway. It seems like probably the way to approach it would be start off with some sort of a voluntary, don't give them a bag unless they ask for it, which I think some people have done. And actually, I go to Wawa now, and they generally don't give you a bag unless you ask for a bag,
Yeah,
and that's great. And it's a lot easier to get that through because you're not charging anybody anything, you're not asking, it's a couple extra sentences for people, and then you can start with 5 cents a bag. Banning stuff, you're going to get a lot of people say no right away.
Right, I think the plastic bag issue, just charging for the bag, is a better idea, and I think you won't get as much pushback on that. But I do think plastics is a major issue. I mean, China has literally stopped recycling plastic. I don't know if the alert has gone out to the world. It's over. The city of Philadelphia is not recycling any plastic. Radnor has listed on their recycling list, we do not recycle plastics. So it is really at a crisis point. Something needs to be done.
And I think that might feed back into our argument, because if there's Radnor businesses giving out plastics, that's going to end up in the Radnor landfill. Because I believe we discussed a couple weeks ago that the recycling costs as much now as trash.
More than.
So by banning or discouraging any kind of use, you're potentially saving the township some money. I have no idea how much that would be, but it's not a free thing. It's not, we're not breaking even. We're paying for the single-use plastics.
And that's why I was attracted to the Ambler, which is a resolution, not a banning, it's an encouraging. I had an interesting conversation, though, at Giant one day. I had my things, and there was a woman of 40s, maybe, checking out ahead of me, and she says to the checkout lady, "When do you start charging for bags?" And the checker-outer said, "Well, I haven't heard anything about that." And I spoke up and said that Radnor was looking at a way to reduce it. And the checkout lady said, "Well, actually, since the 1st of January, I'm guessing 60% of the people who come through my lane have brought their own bags. And by the way, Giant needs to change that roundabout thing because there's nowhere to put the customer's bag that they've brought." it would be lovely if the behavior changed before the,
I honestly don't see that. I went to the Giant on Sunday and looked around. No one but me had my own bags, and I didn't use my bags just to see what would happen. They double bagged a
Oh, yeah.
six-pack of club soda.
I know.
I mean, my husband's there. I mean, it's already in plastic. Put your fingers and carry it. They double bagged, and I know they're trying to be nice, but it really, I think we could be a little tougher, and I think the plastic straws is a little tougher because there is a new plastic straw that's coming out that will pretty much last, but it's made from seaweed, so it will degrade. But it's not, out on the market yet. So I would rather, if we do move ahead on the plastic bags with the charge, to make people think about it, Giant, because I don't see anybody using the bags. And every time I go, I get the look like, oh, here's, lady with a problem, because they can't even access it.
That's right, they
because of
can't
the-
access.
The new setup.
The joke is that Starbucks, which started in Seattle, gave up plastic
Right.
straws. They have paper
It's-
straws, but each straw is in a plastic sleeve. So they literally defeated themselves with it. I would like to see us start soft pedaling it and doing education rather than,
Okay, I guess I'm a little tougher. I want to start charging for plastic bags, but I want to see what happens in Narberth. I
and
think that's the best way to go.
I'm kind of caught in between. I kind of see both sides of this too. Another thing I did was went on Google Scholar and looked up impact evaluations of similar ordinances around the world, and there are a handful of studies that the data quality is pretty lousy. But what I have seen is a couple of studies have shown that the kind of financial nudge that we're talking about, the one that Narberth did, tends to have a little bit of an impact, but it tends to taper off pretty quickly. And it's also kind of a differential impact by socioeconomic status. So it may have a bigger impact on wealthier communities than on poorer communities. So it's complex, and it's one of those things that may or may not actually work the way we expect it to. So, something to certainly consider, but I'm not sure it's going to be a slam dunk. And to the point you were making earlier, it is largely about changing behavior, and whether you do that through incentives or through education or through something else, I don't know. I personally, somebody please tell me, you guys probably know better than I do, what's the best bag to take to the store? Because the ones we used to buy are coated in plastic, and they get holes in them and they break eventually, and then you have to throw them out. So to me,
I've been using mine for years.
you
and
have,
haven't had a
okay, so
problem.
that's the kind you use.
Everything wears out.
Yeah.
Well, I have, they're like sort of cloth, they seem
have some cloth
flimsy, but they're not.
They seem
They
flimsy, but
last
they're not.
really long.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
well,
So there are
Mom's
good
gives out
options.
a bag that eventually is compostable.
Well, that's the other thing. The technology is changing very quickly.
Right.
Now, I absolutely refuse to use a paper straw. I hate those things. They're disgusting. But I don't need a straw.
You're part of the problem.
Right?
Well, and do you need a
I
straw?
don't.
There's part of the
I won't get a
issue.
straw. I'll put the straw down. But yeah, but the paper ones, I don't care for. But compostable plastic sounds great.
Right. Well, maybe
So-
something that you said, Giant, they have to ask you if you want it back.
Yeah.
And they'll have a little sign, Radnor Township, encourages you not to use a plastic bag, it will reduce township taxes,
And
something
if
like
we
that.
were rich instead of good-looking, we could invest in Radnor Recycles or something in a bag that's like the bags that Mom's gives out. Now, what Mom's does is you get 10 cents credit for every bag you bring. Otherwise, they have paper bags, but you can bring, they have a very active recycling program, from Brita filters to corks to snack bags to you name it. And you can even bring back the paper bags that Mom's put your groceries in if you haven't brought your own. But
So
we're
we've got
not
options.
necessarily rich instead of good-looking.
Right. That's the challenge.
And Whole Foods does a nickel a bag,
Yeah,
if you bring your own bag. And you can actually donate it to charity if you want,
right.
or have it as a credit.
Well, that's an incentive type
Right.
deal rather than a,
But it's
Yeah.
on the same order of magnitude of what we're talking about, and it's not earth-shattering, but clearly it's feasible.
I'm going to guess you charge people a nickel a bag, you're going to hear about it from some people.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right.
I
I'm
mean,
sure
you
you're
can give people a nickel, and they're not going to care. You charge them a nickel, they're going to freak out.
Fair point.
But yeah, no, I see your point. I think, like you said, it's going to, the first time you get charged for a bag,
Yeah.
you're going to get a little perturbed. The next time, you're not going to even notice anymore. And if you go to the grocery store to buy $100 of groceries, is another 60 cents going to make any difference to you? You're just going to take the bags.
Yeah, but then maybe we would increase it 50 cents a bag.
And then
It's just to make
Yeah.
room.
Then you're in trouble, I
But
think.
Yeah.
paper bags are available. I mean, you can bring your own bags. It's not like there isn't a solution to this, and we're just charging people.
Well, there's the whole thing of changing people's behavior, which, believe me, when I started, first it was they didn't get out of the house in the car. And then I got into the store and the bags were in the car. So now the bags are hung on the doorknob, so I can't go out of the house without them. And I put them on the front seat of the car. And that's all a behavior change.
It is. It is.
But I think in line with this, an idea is to have the EAC and the League of Women Voters do an educational program on plastics. Someone comes in and really can demonstrate to you chemically why it's going to take 100 years for that bag to melt, and people who recycle, because how do you separate it? If it's in a Tide plastic bag, Republic does not accept it. It's going to the trash to steam plant to be burned, and I happen to know that Republic's not taking it there for free, so there's more of a charge to the township. And then there's the issue of, yes, the plastics burn hot, so they're generating more electricity, but the emissions go way up. So, I mean, it's not a 1-2 step. It's very circular and it's very complex.
I have a question that I guess I should know, but I don't. Is our regular trash going to trash to steam?
No, our regular trash is going to a landfill.
So now, if we're not supposed to recycle plastic
We're going to fill up the landfills.
with plastic,
That's right.
yeah.
And it's going to take 100 years.
Or more.
For most
Right?
plastic
Some say
to
200
break
to
down.
500 years.
It's
Right.
it's complicated.
And this is way beyond plastic bags, too. This is
Yes.
all plastics
Right.
at this point. Which,
Yeah, I can't think of the name of that chain. They're low-price chain. One of them's at the corner of Haverford and City Avenue. What's the name of that? It's a European.
Aldi.
place?
Aldi.
Yes. They don't supply any bags. And yet they get a lot of customers. I mean, and they get the lower socioeconomic customers. So it doesn't discourage them, and they just supply no bags. I found out the hard way the first time I went there, and I had no place to put my stuff. So, I mean, that would probably be the best option.
Costco's the same. You're on your own at Costco.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Can we offer, since it's not just the bags, the bags and straws seem like such a minor part of the whole single-use plastics, can we go ahead and just offer it up? Can we do a graduated? Can we say the first year we would like to do the bags, then the next year, we would like to include the carryout items and other things? I mean, is that something is that too extreme to offer up to the township since it's the more significant problem?
I think it makes sense to have a comprehensive plan, so we're not having the same fight every year.
Agreed.
About something else, something else, something else.
I think it's a cool idea.
Okay.
Do we need more discussions with the business community?
Oh, definitely. And I tried to call Narberth's Chamber of Commerce, but they
Mhm.
don't. They're in the mainline Chamber of Commerce, so I left a message with them because they don't have their own chamber, at least that I could find. So I think that's really the most important place to go, is to see, they really are the only borough that's done it
Around here.
around here, other than Seattle and California, so.
I assume we have some contacts at the Narberth EAC from the last summit that you guys went to. Did you go to that one?
No, I went a couple ago. I didn't go to that one.
Okay. You went to that one.
I don't remember Narberth's EAC. I thought it was Lower Marion's EAC.
Maybe it is, yeah.
Well, I
I'm
know the
assuming, I don't know if
Narberth
we,
whole thing generated from the Girl Scouts.
That's
Oh, from the
exactly.
Girl
The Girl
Scouts,
Scouts
okay.
initiated it.
interesting. Well, it sounds like a little more discussion's needed before we, what do you guys want to do? I mean, should we go to the BOC with anything at this point? Should we ask for a little bit more time? Should we
I'd ask for
Oh,
more
yeah.
time.
ask for
Lot
more time? And,
Because the letter could say, these are some of the ideas we are thinking about and discussing, so they know we're doing, it's in process. And because you've got the whole issue of compliance that's not going to be easy.
Didn't they also want a more significant response from the business associations,
Yes.
not just the Wayne, but Garrett Hill and
Yeah.
other places?
I haven't heard back yet.
Well, people have to decide what they feel about paper bags as well. Because if the paper bag, I mean, the recycling business has gotten so narrow that if there's any kind of food contamination, and that includes the bottles, they don't take it. And I know that right now, I'm trying to wash out my bottles before I put in the recycling bin, and it is a pain. Particularly with pasta sauce and stuff like
Pasta
that,
sauce.
you can't get it
it's sticky.
out. So, I mean, I think globally, there's probably an enormous conversation that needs to happen on a much larger thing than Radnor Township. But the whole movement is so facile right now that how do you know where to come down? I mean, the recycling things that the township sent with the tax bills, pretty much out of date already.
Things are moving fast.
Education, I think, is the key.
Yep, sounds good. So I will volunteer to draft an email back to the BOC outlining some of those things and say, we need a little more time to discuss this. These are some of the things that
We're
we
thinking
want to
about.
consider. In the meantime, suggestions on how we move forward, bringing in some community groups, some business groups to talk through this?
Would we expect to get a response from the BOC with feedback in terms of what they think would be more palatable than something else? Like if we presented them with, do you want to do fees? Do you want to do voluntary stuff? Do you think they would tell us what may be more doable than others?
Maybe, although it would be heavily politically filtered, I would think,
Yes.
through,
Right
sort of
now.
Everybody's going to be a little gun shy because of the imminent elections.
Yes. I don't think you'll get much.
In terms of more time, maybe they need more time.
yeah.
You know, it'd be nice if we had not just input from business, but like some leadership from businesses who are also pushing from their end. I think that may be more,
Should get moms in here.
if moms would get it done.
Yeah, moms
Well,
would
I
get-
know the league would do a program, so maybe before we really get to this, something on plastics and try and get a conversation going about, from the residents.
Grassroots, you've
Yep.
been saying it.
Yep.
Perfect. All right, thank you. Let's move on. Next housekeeping item is voting for the chair and vice chair. I've mentioned to some of you, I'm more than happy to continue serving as chair if you want me. If anyone else is interested in standing, I'm also happy to support you.
I think you do a nice
I think you
job.
do a great job. So
Thank you.
moved.
All right, fair enough. We'll move on from that. Vice Chair, Jim, are you interested in serving?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it unless someone else wants to step up for it.
No, that's fine.
You're a liaison, so you can sit this one out.
Yeah,
Okay. There you go.
well, I'm endless liaison, although actually in December, I have to resign from planning because I'll have used up my 10 years. So I'll watch you, but I won't be here in January.
Well, you can join the EAC. at
Well, I
that
could do
point.
that, yeah, now that
It'd
you
be
mention it.
full-time.
Okay.
Please. Yeah, you should join us. All in favor of electing Jim as vice chair?
Aye.
All right, it carries. You're on.
All right.
Thank you, Jim. Community education and awareness, anything to add beyond what we've already been talking about?
I have nothing new other than thoughts and plans. Like I said, I spent the last month preparing for my presentation in Prague, which it was very interesting to see what's happening globally and what their priorities are. And plastics weren't actually mentioned. I mean, none of the presentations were on plastics, but one of the really interesting pieces that I got from it is that the effects of climate change are obviously happening, and they're extremely regional. Even in one small country like Hungary or something, they're having like horrible effects some places, and then only miles away, they don't have that. But the majority of the attendees were from Europe and Asia. There were very few people from America, and that was another piece that I gleaned, that most of their efforts seemed to be national, whereas ours seemed to be local in this country. So that was what I was taking up my time.
What did you present on? I'm curious.
Climate change education in the United States, yeah. So I based it on research I've done with students, and I did different surveys, and so I had data to present, and I got a lot of good feedback about it, but kind of bringing out that education is the first piece. And of course I'm at university, but and many people brought up the fact that we need the education starting at elementary. But I pointed out that the university people become the leaders, and they certainly, above all, need to be educated. So that was kind of how the conversation went. Yeah.
Have you, I'm sure you've reflected on modalities for communication and for education sort of outside of the formal education setting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Do you have ideas, or did you pick up any tips or hints on, ways to approach building the kind of grassroots awareness that we're trying to get to with some of these initiatives?
Not from that summit. There, a lot of the presentations were a little bit we're very focused, for instance, on effects of climate change on materials. So one was about how the climate change is affecting national monuments and buildings, and things like that. So the majority were very, very focused, and I did not get any useful ideas that way at all.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Villanova is working to develop a sustainability curriculum in all areas. I've been to a town hall, and then they had the walkout, the strike when the students struck around the world two or three Fridays ago. And I got the impression that it's faculty and students over and opposed to the administration. But they're working quite hard to embrace this. And they will have a sustainability element in the law school, the engineering school, the nursing school, definitely through public health.
Interesting.
So it's just in its very early days, but they have an environmental major, environmental injustice. So that's another area where Villanova is doing it, and they smile with a bit of a scowl when they say there's not one piece of sustainability in all that new building. And the faculty and the students are very concerned, but the administration is. And I've heard that the new board president is someone who's in the fossil fuel business. So it's going to take a while. We can't get discouraged, but we just have to keep plugging.
Thank you. Skip, liaison report.
Well, after a series of relatively short meetings since the first of the year, we have this agenda from the outer reaches of hell, I guess. But we have Wawa, we have this coming Monday, Wawa, the new hotel that will be near Penn Medicine, a minor subdivision, the Jaguar Range Rover edition, and a discussion of parking in the PLI district that deals with medical parking. So if we are here past midnight, you'll see me taking a nap.
My condolences.
Is Villanova's lights
No, no,
and bubbles not in that?
not so
They're
far.
Still delayed?
Well, I think that was a subject of a zoning court appeal, so that hasn't gotten back to us. Well, we turned it down, but, so I don't know that we have to turn it down again. It's now, I think, in the courts.
Thank you. Any new business?
New old business. I was at a seminar saw a presentation by the Philadelphia Water Department on their stormwater work, and it focused a lot on their community involvement. I spoke to the guy doing the presentation, I think it was the director of engineering or something, and I asked if someone would be interested in coming out here and speaking to us about what they've been doing in the city. It sounds like I might be able to get someone if we're interested in doing a night of stormwater again at some point.
Great. Is there interest in that? I certainly think it'd be valuable. Thank you, Jim. Yeah. Any old business? Any community comment? Hi.
Hi, my name's Anna Marie. I live in Rosemont, and I wanted to touch base about the discussion about the plastics ban. I have a couple different areas of thought that I wanted to share while you're still kind of brainstorming and doing research and all that. I'm overwhelmingly in support of environmental improvement. I think that no matter what's going on, we're all going to be really sorry if we don't deal with climate change. So it's a priority for me. And I guess, as a small business owner, I'm acutely aware of how particularly tiny businesses are vulnerable. So I encourage you, whatever you do, to incentivize rather than penalize, particularly the less capitalized businesses. Most of them can't afford to have health insurance for themselves or their employees without a spouse who has a great plan that they can get on. And I was kind of shocked to find that out in building my small business. I pay out of pocket for a plan. So right now, small businesses are not particularly well capitalized, and whatever we should do, I think incentivize is the way to go. And the discussion of moms and Whole Foods, the psychology is good as well. You're supporting people rather than shaming them. And that's a good place to be from an emotional standpoint. And the other thing, as a disability advocate, I would say that I've certainly read a lot about ordinances that were passed, particularly with straws, where discussions with disability inclusion experts and advocates were not had in the drafting of ordinances. And there are people who really need to use a straw because they can't use a normal cup. Processes for those individuals should not be more embarrassing and onerous, and that's really important. If we don't have anybody on the committee who is an expert in disabilities, I think making sure that roping in one or more knowledge experts of that sort is important. And I certainly know some people where I can try and bring. I can probably try and find someone, but I wasn't even sure what the specifics were that were being talked about because I've been very busy with other things the last couple months. So I guess I do have the question about this since I haven't been able to find anything in writing and I haven't had time to watch tons and tons of meetings. Are we just talking about shopping bags and straws provided? Is that all that's on the table at this time?
Really good question, and first of all, thank you for joining us and bringing up those issues. I think it's really, really important. There is nothing written yet. We are really just doing research at this phase, and based on the discussion today, I would say that everything's on the table, but it was really initially just a discussion about plastic bags and straws, particularly anything single-use, but that's really the focus of what we started talking about. But given kind of the direction that some of the recycling discussions have taken, I'm not sure that we'll land there necessarily. But there is absolutely nothing on paper yet. We're really just looking at other townships and other communities as examples of where we might go with it.
Okay. And, you know, as an example of kind of unintended consequences, you know, the straw thing is a great example, but even if you look at this, the way they changed parking. Used to be my 81-year-old mother could park her car. She can't walk very far. She'd just take her quarter out of her purse, put it in the meter right there, walk into the store in front of her. Now, she got to find that handicap designated spot, walk 20 feet to the kiosk, 20 feet back to her car, and then however many feet to the store. And she doesn't have a smartphone. So I haven't even had time to go to the township and say, can she have like a special plaque or something to like opt out of this?
Right.
Can she pay a fee? I don't know, you know, but I would say that's probably an example of a process that didn't include people who are analyzing what will a person who has different needs do, what will their experience be? And I think particularly when we're going for efficiency, we need to remember not to leave people behind who are going to really struggle. And I think that's important. And I would also say this is a meeting where you don't have a lot of people in the audience. And there's
Don't rub it in.
Sorry, no, nothing, no offense intended. I just, but there's been a very conversational tone, and a lot of times when people are talking to one another on the committees, they forget to keep including their microphone in the process, and our meetings are not closed captioned. Be aware of your people at home who have hearing difficulties, please. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent points. Final comments, questions, anything else? Okay, this has been a great discussion. Thank you so much, everybody. Good to see you. See you next month.